One day I went to visit the old historic house where my grandmother and grandfather lived. I hadn't seen them for a long time, so I was quite excited to see them. When I arrived, they warmly welcomed me. However, there was an eerie silence in the house. As my grandmother prepared lunch, my grandfather took me to the living room with an old photo album. In the album were old photographs taken throughout the history of our family. However, among these photos were some with an unfamiliar figure in black attire. In each picture, this figure was getting closer. When I asked my grandfather who this figure was, his eyes filled with fear. "It represents a curse from our family's past," he said quietly. "Whenever a generation starts to see this figure, strange events occur." That night, as I tried to sleep, I heard a faint rustling outside the window. When I lifted the curtain, I saw the black-clothed figure in the garden, looking at me. My heart started beating rapidly. When I went outside, the figure disappeared, but I could hear whispers in the dark. In the morning, I realized that my grandmother and grandfather were not in the house. As I roamed inside, I noticed that pages of the old photo album were torn, and behind each torn page was a new photo of the black-clothed figure getting even closer. In panic, I looked around. The gloomy atmosphere that dominated the house was now even more intense. I quickly searched the house for my grandmother and grandfather, bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom. I checked everywhere, but there was no sign of them. When I saw the basement door, I hesitated for a moment before heading down. As I stood in front of it, I heard a faint murmur coming from the other side. I slowly opened the door and went down the stairs. The basement was filled with dusty old items, but what intrigued me the most was an old chest in the middle. On the chest was a crest displaying our family's surname. When I opened the chest, I found an old diary explaining how the black-clothed figure had pursued our family over the years. According to the diary, this figure was a spirit cursed upon our family centuries ago. However, there was a way to free this spirit. The youngest member of our family had to stand against it courageously. After closing the diary and putting it back, I noticed a slight movement in a dark corner of the basement. I cautiously moved closer and saw the black-clothed figure. Instead of running, I approached it and declared, "I will end this with you here." Seeing the determination in my face, the figure began to retreat. When I cornered it, the figure slowly melted away, and in its place stood my grandmother and grandfather. They, like me, were in the grasp of this terrifying curse. As the sunlight seeped into the basement, the three of us took a deep breath. The curse was over, and our family was finally free. My grandmother and grandfather hugged me tightly, appreciating my courage. This visit became an unforgettable memory, marking the time I discovered the history of our family and the strength within me.